Hello and welcome to a brand new podcast. This is all about the fast-paced world of Formula One. I am your host, Jack Price, and my guest this week is my good friend and F1 fan, Jamie Davies. Please keep going.
It was a terrible effort of doing a Formula One engine noise. I don't know how to do it anymore. When I was a kid, I used to play with the cars and do the old engine noise, but it's not like that anymore.
You're going to sound really quiet now.
Yeah,
that was your engine noise. Wow, that was a great impression.
Silence,
That was a great impression. This is, of course, the Pole Position podcast. We'll be doing episodes throughout the 2019 season. And in this first episode, we will be looking at the F1 winter testing, which took place in Barcelona over the last 8 days. We will look at the news stories which have come out during the test, which we obviously need to discuss, and then round off the podcast with a result of a poll which was done by BBC F1 on what was the best-looking car on the grid this season. We've also done one for our Let's Talk Sport YouTube channel, so we'll plug that as well at the end of the show. But we've got to start with F1 testing. Now, obviously we've had F1 winter testings, obviously, for the last few years, and they're okay. But
it's better than nothing, isn't it? I guess
it's a little glimpse, isn't it?
Yeah,
we haven't had F1 for a couple of months, and we see these cars out on track. They're not out on track for long because quite a few of them break down. But that's the whole point of
Williams.
Yeah, that's the whole point of F1 winter testing. But do you think this year has sort of changed a little bit? I mean, a lot of the cars were running for a considerably longer amount of time. You know, not many of them were breaking down. Is this a good thing? Obviously, these new hybrid era cars, they've slowly been taking a few years to actually get into place. Do you think it's actually looking good now?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it in which you can't. It's funny because when you look at the timings as well, like Toro Rosso didn't have a bad time, and isn't it funny how Toro Rosso and Red Bull have now got the Honda engines, and Red Bull are very happy about where that's going.
They did quite a few 100 laps, didn't they?
I think they're the dark horses because of it, and I just this is why it's so important now in F1 where it's not just one team anymore. If you can afford it, get two teams in that lineup because one of them is your test team. It's like you're never going to win a championship. Yes, you won the race before we ever did back in 2008. Thanks Vettel for doing that to us, but you can experiment with things. Obviously, sometimes it's all about who's got the most money and who's got the most monopoly in F1. And for Red Bull, it's certainly helped them. But I think in terms of testing, I don't take it that seriously where, okay, Ferrari and Mercedes are up there again by showing that they're the fastest. And, I guess even if they were the slowest, I wouldn't look at it and think, that doesn't really bother me. Because at the end of the day, they've got the resources to change everything in the next couple of weeks. Both teams have got staff of over 1,000 people, so it's mad. It's mad how much work they've got going on in those factories in Brackley and of course in Monza or wherever they're based, Ferrari. So I don't take the testing very seriously, but it's just a bit of a preview. It's kind of like the Confederations Cup for the World Cup. No one gives a crap about it, but they'll watch it because it's something going on.
Yeah, well, we saw that. I think it might have only been the last day of testing that Mercedes were actually giving the two drivers free rein to put in fast lap times.
Yeah.
Because for most of the testing, they were just doing race simulations and doing as many laps as they could. So I think again, it's just about how many laps you can put in. I know Ferrari were actually trying to push it a little bit more and actually showed that they could be the fastest car on the grid this season. I think Mercedes are a little bit worried. I think they put a new upgrade on just for the second week of testing as well, which obviously shows how much they're worried a bit about Ferrari this season. But again, we've talked about these for a few years now in whatever shape or form we do our views, but is this the year where we actually think Ferrari might do it? I mean, how many times have we said this? But do we think, because you often say Red Bull are going to be dark horses in this season, do we think Ferrari are actually going to be the number one team this year?
I said it last year and I got that completely wrong. I sound like a Liverpool fan. It's going to be, I don't know really, Ferrari. I think Ferrari have got to get to that point where don't believe it if it's not there. You've still got to grind out the results because no matter what, Mercedes are up there. And that Mercedes team is just incredible. Like I think because of how boring we find it with a team dominating the sport, I think Mercedes are better than when Red Bull were about. And it's just so organised, isn't it, Mercedes? They just have everything in place. Toto Wolff is a man of his words. Niki Lauda, I think he's just there to get free food.
But we hope he's better for this season,
Yes.
obviously, after his couple of operations, which is important. Obviously, I don't know if you're going to point out, Bottas has a new beard.
It's an amazing beard.
Which is, I know that's not like the most important thing to talk about.
I think it is. It's going to add a bit of weight, against the aerodynamics.
I think that beard could help him win the
Oh
championship.
yeah, I think he's a man now. He's very quiet normally, so you wouldn't know if he's a man or a woman. But no, I'm joking. But I think with Ferrari, I think it's interesting because Charles Leclerc, I think it's whether or not he'll accept number 2 really. I just have this crazy prediction that he'll win the first race, probably because I'm a big Leclerc
You prefer him
fan.
more?
I like Vettel as much as I like Leclerc, to be honest. I think Vettel over the last few years has actually been a lot more pleasant, if that makes sense. Like when he was at Red Bull, there was this thing about him where I wasn't a big fan of Vettel.
Do you know it was because he was young?
Might have been, but I think he's grown into it a lot more where he just seems like a really nice bloke as well, doesn't he? If you say anything stupid, he'll probably point it out. But he's just, I do like him, and I think being at Ferrari, he's taken up the job very well in terms of he learns a bit of Italian when he wins a race. He understands what it's like racing for pretty much the biggest team in F1, and he's like Michael Schumacher, and he's a German that's gone into Ferrari and wants to bring back the glory days of them.
Do you think he's come out of his shell from leaving Red Bull to Ferrari, and he's sort of now more a leader as well, isn't he? Because for the last few seasons, he not only has he been the voice for Ferrari because they keep a lot of it behind closed doors, but I think with Kimi Räikkönen as well, who doesn't actually say a lot. It's down to Vettel, isn't it, that to sort of stabilise the ship. And obviously Ferrari have had a tough time. Obviously, Maurizio Arrivabene is not now their team principal.
Thank goodness.
Is it Mattia Binotto?
Yeah.
Is now the new team principal at Ferrari. Is that going to change?
I hope so, because Arrivabene just screwed it up. I'm sorry, but like the pits and all that throughout each race, every time Ferrari had the race in their hands, when it came to the pits, they just screwed it up, didn't they? And this is what I mean by Mercedes. They just have everything in place. Whenever it's a bad race for them, they still get a good result. Like if Hamilton's at the back, he'll come third or second. It's still a great race for them. But for Ferrari, I just looked at Arrivabene thinking, I think his passion was that he is Italian, isn't he? So they understand it. Every Italian love Ferrari. It's that they even one of the the player from the Gulf. I forgot his name. I should know this. The Italian, but he won the Open, and he said he doesn't know if on the day when he won the Open, a journalist asked him how big is this for Italy, and he says, well, if Ferrari won a race today, that's bigger. And he said that's Italy sport for you. We love Ferrari. But I think with Arrivabene, his time had to come. I think it was good that they got rid of him. I've got nothing wrong with him, but I just think he had enough years, and I just feel like the chances were wasted. It'd be interesting to see what the new chap does, but they need to just improve on these little screw-ups, basically, because Ferrari otherwise are asking for it. And they keep going out of the championship, like 10 races or 9 races before it's over. They got to last all 21 races this year, and that's not going to be easy.
Well, I mean, I didn't know he was in the post for 4 seasons.
Yeah, I know, it's gone quick.
When I was doing the research, I was like, 4 years?
It's gone quick. And that's what I mean, like 4 years is in football, time, you wouldn't get that.
But in 6 months, I think.
Yeah, not even,
but if we look at it, 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel was top of the single laps in winter testing with a 1 minute 16.2. Hamilton was only 0.3 of a second behind him.
Oh dear, he's too slow.
Yeah, that's how close it was. I mean, however, if I look at it, they ended 200 laps behind what Mercedes did over the 8 days of testing. Obviously,
That's crazy.
Vettel had that incident where he hit the barriers. That was down to a wheel rim failure. But again, that's important to get that out of the way now, isn't it? You know, get all the problems out of the way now. The most important question, Jamie, really is Ferrari gone this next step? Are they?
It's a tough
Come on,
question.
I've got to ask you that, Jamie. I've got to ask you that.
It's a tough question because I could say that, and then they win in Australia, and then you think, they're back. But then we said that last year, and then the year before when Vettel won those races, and then Vettel last year won in Bahrain. You think 2 out of 2. No one would have predicted that. We got to see. As I said, Ferrari could win the first 6 races and still screw it up. That's how I feel about it. You've just like in football or in rugby, you got to play 80 and the 90 minutes to win the matches. You can't just think, 60 minutes in, we've pretty much put the game under the bed. With this, they've got to look at it and think, it's Singapore. What happened here 2 years ago? Yeah, we crashed and we screwed it up. If that crash had never have happened, Vettel might have been a world champion with Ferrari. So,
is it race by race? Really?
I think they're the favourites, Ferrari, because of what we've seen in testing. But there's only that much of a difference where it's literally as small as a tic tac. I still think it depends on Leclerc and Vettel, because when you look at Mercedes, they've got 2 drivers they're so used to now. They've had 2 seasons together. I think this is the season where Bottas has to fight for it, because if he wants a world championship, and if he carries on the way he did at the end of last season, Esteban Ocon will be knocking on that door and asking, when do you want me in that seat? Because I think he's in under real pressure. With Ferrari, as I mentioned, Leclerc and Vettel, if Leclerc can start off straight in qualifying in Melbourne and actually outpace him, then Vettel might have to look at him and think, I've got a challenge on my hands. And he knows it's a challenge. He complimented him in that press conference last year when they were wearing their sunglasses because the room was too bright, which I thought was hilarious. So Vettel knows what to expect, and Leclerc, in my eyes, could be a very promising young driver.
Well, let's hope so, because we want a lot of good things happening.
Well, when do you ever see Ferrari employ a young driver that's not really done much in F1 yet? I can't. When was the last start? Alonso, he was already a double world champion. Kimi Raikkonen was, he hadn't won any world championships yet, but he was doing wonders for McLaren at the time. Schumacher was already a world champion. You just look at it. Since I've been following F1, I've not seen this.
Experienced drivers,
yeah, and that recruitment was a big move. And we all thought Leclerc would have another season at Sauber, but no, we were wrong, and he was there straight away. So they believe in him. They really do.
And obviously, let's hope that comes to a positive impact for Ferrari. But you mentioned Bottas. I just want to quickly go on to that. He said at the beginning of testing this year, he did an article with somebody, I'm not sure who it was, but he said that after the end of last season, he had to rethink what was going on in sort of his F1 career, because he said he was actually in a dark place after that season because he hadn't won a race. He'd obviously give up that race in Russia to Lewis Hamilton from team orders. And I think he realised that with the car he had last season, he didn't do enough.
Should have won a race.
Yeah, and I know, obviously he could have won that race, but Mercedes changed it over. Like you said, is he gonna really come out of his shell, as it were, and sort of try and be as on level? I know he can't be on level pegging with Lewis Hamilton because Lewis Hamilton has won so many world championships, but does he have to sort of come alongside him during the season to sort of say, I'm going to fight you for this? Well,
I've been, you know me, I go all over the place, and I was following Valtteri Bottas, in his office the other day. There's a lot of missed calls from Nico Rosberg. Yeah. He's been calling up for advice of how to beat Lewis Hamilton, I think. No, I'm joking. But I think with Valtteri Bottas, he asked that. He's got to come out of his shell. He's got to, hasn't he? I mean, I think Nico Rosberg, when he was in his first season with Hamilton, obviously that was more of a test year because the car wasn't ready while Red Bull was still dominating. But in 2014, what happened? We only had Bahrain was the second or third race of 2014, and he went up to Hamilton in that race and said, "I'm not moving out of the way for you just because you've already got a world championship." And that for me, even though they were friends after that race because they did that good old punch together, figured, "Oh,
but even that was a bit."
I think that was I think that was Lewis thinking, he's after me, he's after it, isn't he? He can do it. And what happens? Childhood friends no longer, from what we believe, they're no longer friends. And that's how I see it. Where he jumped in straight away, Nico, where he was really dangerous. But when Valtteri Bottas won those 3 races in his first season at Mercedes, it was a good statement. But the fact that he didn't win any races last year, he should have won Azerbaijan, by the way, but that was a mistake. And he was so not himself after that race because he knew, am I going to get another opportunity like that this season? And he didn't really. And I just think with Bottas, as I just already said before, Esteban Ocon is the reserve driver, so that's a bit worrying.
Yeah, well, he was obviously watching during the testing as well. Esteban
was,
Ocon
yeah.
was
There was
there.
there was a meme of Esteban Ocon behind Valtteri Bottas, and then it's like, and the caption was, when you got that monkey on your back,
He's there waiting.
He's
to
there,
pounce.
just like, I'm waiting.
Now I'm just going to go through some of the laps that happened. Obviously, we know Sebastian Vettel for Ferrari was top. Mercedes second, Renault, Nico Hulkenberg in the Renault was third. Daniel Kvyat, you said, obviously for Toro Rosso, did quite well in the testing.
He's really interesting me because imagine being basically promoted then demoted, and then sacked by the same people, and then you come back in less than a year. It's such a bizarre scenario. I don't know how he feels about that, but there was something I read the other day where he's believed in coming back ever since he lost the job, which is good for him, but at the back of his mind, there must be something telling him now they haven't found anybody else. That's why you're there. You're just on the contact list and they can get you in.
Yeah.
I just hope he does so much better. I actually quite like Kvyat. I just think he's had a very, very tough time in F1 where he's quick, but he's not consistent. So that's what he needs to change for Toro Rosso, because I think at some point you got to question his wages, where Daniel Kvyat might think, I'm better than Toro Rosso. I can win races, but there's no opportunities out there for him, sadly.
And I think obviously Vettel will be going, oh no, he's back again, because I think them two had a bit of a.
Do you remember the podium talk they had
before
they went on the podium, and then Daniel? I watch that now and again. It's so funny.
It's really good. But we have to talk about the bottom of the table now. This is a team that didn't come for the first 2 days of the first week of testing, which is Williams.
HRT. Oh, Williams.
Yeah. Well, they were kind of on the same level when they didn't turn up. But Robert Kubica said that he's still not sure because they haven't had enough time to look at the car. I think George Russell did the most laps out of the two of them. We all wanted Robert Kubica to come back into the sport. He's finally here, and then it comes to winter testing, and he hasn't really had much time to sort of get used to the car again. And I think he needs that because he's had so long out of the sport. But
he's got one arm.
He needs to get used to the car design. I know they've obviously had time over the winter, but when it comes to actually driving the car, you need as much time as possible. I mean, even Lewis Hamilton needs as much time as possible. So do you think, where are Williams going to be at the back of the grid for sure?
In terms of what we've seen, yes. We were talking about this on the Let's Talk Sports show last week, where a friend of mine, Philip, who's an F1 fan, she reckons this season's already gone. Next season they'll try and come back, and I'm a bit worried because for someone like Robert Kubica, who's fought really hard to get back into F1, it just feels like it might only be for a short period, which is still good. He'll look back and be proud of it, but you want to be there for as long as you can and to be competing maybe for at least the top 10 when you're in a Williams car anyway. But it's just funny how 20 odd years ago they had World Championship cars, and now we're going down the road where Williams are just becoming non-existent. Claire Williams, I still don't understand her statement by saying it's embarrassing. It's like, well, we know that. You don't have to tell us that. We know that. And it's just like, why not actually tell us what the problems are, address it, and they won't. I'm very concerned. And I think for George Russell as well, like, you look at him and think, he won the Formula 2 championship, while Lando Norris didn't. And Lando Norris is at McLaren, where, McLaren are like Williams, but a little bit better. Yeah. But he's at a bigger team, and then George Russell must think, I won the F2 championship, and I'm at pretty much a car that can't get it on the track at the moment. He said it didn't bother him, but I think it did. I think they're just going to say that because they're in the public eye and they're in the media. But I think deep down they want to go out there and race.
The thing is, getting to F1, I think, is an achievement in itself. And I think
it's the 20 best drivers in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for George Russell, I think that is a huge step. But you look at Stoffel Vandoorne. I know he was in a McLaren last year, but he didn't. Beat his. I know that again, and I know that was Fernando Alonso, but he didn't beat his teammate for the whole season, and he disappeared. So for a young driver, you need to make an impact.
The standards there. I mean, look at Pierre Gasly and Charles Leclerc. They had their first pretty much had their first full seasons, and they just nailed it. Yeah. And that's why Alonso was so good, because Alonso was at Minardi when he started, and everyone straight away thought, look at this guy, he might win you. He might win us something. And Renault picked him up, and they knew exactly what they were getting out of it.
And you saw what happened with that,
and Kimi Raikkonen's another one. You've got to do it the moment you're on that track, because that's what they're paying them for. I know people always say you need time, but it's like, you've got simulators now. You've got all these karting and all that experiences. I know it's not the same, but you are just driving a car, and the only real challenge they have before it is to basically be fit They go through, in the words of Christian Horner, these are more. They are beyond human. They are.
A lot of people say that F1 drivers just get in a car and drive, but they're like
rubbish
athletes, aren't they?
Yeah,
you see them. And
I'd love it if they did a video of doing like a day of an F1 driver when it's not at a track. Like, I'd love to know what they get up to.
I'd love to know about Nico Hulkenberg, really, because when Mark Webber and Jenson Button were racing, they had to lose more was it fat and that than the smaller drivers because of how tall they were in the car, and they needed to lose the weight to go as quick as possible. And obviously Nico Hulkenberg is quite a tall guy. So again, I think it's a little bit different nowadays. I think the way that the car's built and the way the car's structured, they don't have to lose as much. But in them days, Jenson Button and Mark Webber were probably the fittest drivers on the grid. And I think people always say, they just get in a car and they drive around a track all day. But they are.
What amazes me is how much weight they lose just from doing a race.
Yeah, like Singapore and Bahrain and that. Yeah,
Singapore is a deadly sin. But I look at Nico Hulkenberg though and think, just to chase Liberty Media and all that, if you want to create more products for your F1 store, why not do a Where's Nico? Have the crowd of Monza. You got to find Nico in there. It's not hard because he's the tallest bloke out of them all. So that's something for it. Yeah, or just put it out on an Instagram graphic. It'd be great.
Well, let's talk about Renault actually with Nico Hulkenberg. Again, not done too bad this winter.
They've done all right, yeah.
Racking up a lot of mileage in terms of Renault. I know Renault have had a few stick over the last few years, but they also have. I don't want to call McLaren a sister team really in that sense, but they do have an engine.
They are though, aren't they?
They do have an engine from Renault. So
I just worry though. Was it Alonso's anger and maybe patience that broke the relationship of Honda and McLaren? Because I just wonder if it wasn't for Alonso, would they still be together? Maybe. And who'd have thought Renault and McLaren? It just doesn't seem right, does it? And as you say, sister team technically to the Renault lot. Because Renault is a massive team. They haven't got any fun problems. They've proven themselves from many years of F1, including 05 and 06. And in 08 and all that when they had Alonso back. So I think with Renault it's interesting because, as I said to you when Daniel Ricciardo had left Red Bull, we were saying, weren't we? Hamilton left McLaren for Mercedes, which was no journalist knew that. No one expected that.
Yeah.
When that announcement came, we were thinking, what on earth's he doing? This is his boyhood team. McLaren.
I can remember after that Singapore race when he pulled over and you could just see the camera had zoomed on him and he was thinking after the car
threw the steering wheel out as well.
And you could tell then that he'd sort of, I've made that.
It was literally after that race as well. And he did it in Abu Dhabi when he already had decided that season he's going somewhere else. But his car broke out again. And that's when he led Singapore and Abu Dhabi. And he must have thought, this isn't right. I would have won that race. Because he is the best driver on the grid at the moment. He's probably the best driver F1's ever had. But he hasn't, statistically, we don't know that yet. But what annoys me is that people are being a bit funny about Daniel Ricciardo. And I'm thinking, no, go back to 2012. He's joining a big team on paper. There's got to be something going on there where we don't know about it, but he looks at it and thinks, okay, let's look at a 4-year plan. It might be that Renault could be competing for world championships soon, and it might be from this year.
Yeah. Is the 4-year plan up, or are we in the third year of that?
It's third year, isn't it now? And then I think it's. And then it all changes in 2021, doesn't it? Properly.
So they need to win the title pretty quickly.
Need to win it quickly. Yeah. That'll be interesting. But I just think with Renault, I hope they do well. I like Renault. They've been a great asset to Formula One, and I like Nico Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
I think he deserves so much more. And
if he gets a podium this year, that'd be amazing.
Has he ever actually had a podium? I don't think he has, which is hard to believe because the guy nearly won Brazil in 2012.
He's been fourth a couple of times, hasn't he? So he's just missed out on that third spot. But again, the driving lineup. We said last year with Nico Hulkenberg and Carlos Sainz that was a good driving lineup.
Yeah.
This year with Daniel Ricciardo, you mentioned what Lewis Hamilton went through at McLaren. Red Bull had a couple of issues with Ricciardo last year. He spent most of the time watching the racing instead of being on the track. Yeah. Is this now a motivation for him to sort of prove that he can do it in a different car, without being in the Red Bull family, as it were?
Well, I mean, he was in. Yeah, I mean, that's it. He was in Toro Rosso, wasn't he, before it? And he was. We expected him to join Red Bull, so it was no real surprise when that happened. And I think he needs to prove himself. But I worry Ricciardo's one of those as well, where even though I've just said he could be a very good driver for Renault, I just worry that maybe his time's already up in F1 in terms of being at the top, because I don't know what it is about Ricciardo. I think he's a great driver, but I don't know what it is. Like, I love him as a character, and I love him for, he's an ambassador for the sport. Everyone loves Ricciardo.
Yeah.
He never stopped smiling. The only time was Monaco in 2016 when he should have won the race.
That was a face of thunder. That was.
Oh, that was weird, wasn't it? It was like, I don't know. It was just like the death of him. Like, I've never seen Ricciardo like that. When you just have that one chap who you've never seen sad, never unhappy, and you just
I'm pointing at Jamie right now because that is him every single day.
Thank you. But I'm high on life. But a bit of weed was not involved, or bliss. But you just look at him and you think, this isn't Daniel Ricciardo. His soul's gone. And he was like that at the end of last season, I thought, because he kept joking about Red Bull, and he said, "Oh, I'm not in that car anymore. I don't have to worry about it."
Blow up again.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, Ricciardo really is like pushing buttons. And you just think, could that be the character he needs to get? Because the one thing you learn about F1 and in any industry, as much as I hate to say it, is you have to be aggressive, and you sometimes have to get your emotions out of it, and that's what I don't like. Because me, I hate emotionless people. They bore me, but it's their determination. I want Ricciardo to achieve well in F1, but maybe he has to be a nasty guy, because Nico Rosberg, I think, learnt that in his last season with Lewis Hamilton, and I think 2015 in that US race when the cap got thrown at him for second place, he threw it right back. So he just thought, I don't like you anymore. I want to beat you now. Next year, bring it on.
Yeah, and that was actually really fun to watch as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, the rivalry was amazing.
Yeah.
But the races were really boring.
Yeah. If it wasn't for that rivalry, we probably would have turned off.
Yeah.
But we move on from, obviously, Renault. Haas, again, look even better this year. They were the fourth best team last season. Obviously, they had their issues in Australia. We all remember.
Oh my God, that's 12 months ago.
Yeah, I know. Both cars stopped on track because of pit stop issues. Are they making improvement? Obviously, they're based with the sort of Ferrari team, so they buy parts off Ferrari.
Yeah.
So, how do we think Haas are going to do this year? Obviously, the same driving lineup, which is a little bit uncommon, really, because most of the time at least one driver goes from one team. I think Mercedes and Hamilton and Bottas is probably only the other teams that hasn't changed. Is that I don't want to say is that a good lineup, because I have nothing against Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen, but mixed, for the fourth best team on the grid, is that when you look at Renault, I don't say Renault below, but you look at Renault in the standings last year, they now have Hülkenberg and Ricciardo.
Yeah.
Kimi Räikkönen's racing for Sauber.
I know, it's crazy.
You've got Sainz at McLaren. Do we think that Haas is Haas going to challenge?
It's the only uneventful team of the driver transfers. I mean, Mercedes in itself was dramatic because we weren't sure what was going to happen to Bottas.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's consistent that they've stuck with them. I think Kevin Magnussen's actually been doing okay at Haas, and I think Grosjean's, he's had his moments again. Like Azerbaijan, he crashed the car in a warm-up.
That was Ericsson's fault.
That was it. Well, apparently it was, and it's just like, what are you doing? It's like, come on. But I think it was 12 months ago where people forget Haas were actually really good in that race, and then the pit stops just. I think they were just so overly excited where they were going to finish, and then they went, "Oh crap, we got to change the tyres." I was so sad that day. She watched some of those mechanics, and they were in tears because he
slammed the door, didn't he? I can remember in the pits, the guy went straight into the pits and just slammed the door shut.
Slammed the door shut.
He was so disappointed.
It's career was on the line, I think, when that happened, and it's not nice to see. But I think with Haas, they've been quiet again in the mid-table. Did they finish fourth last season, or it was Renault who finished fourth last season, wasn't it? I think they did. From your face, I'd imagine you do know, really.
Well, it says in my notes, Haas had the fourth fastest car last year.
Oh, maybe they did then. Oh, yeah. I could have sworn Renault won it.
I don't know. We'll have to look that up. Second episode of the Pole Position podcast, we will let you know about last year.
But I don't know. Haas. can I be honest? I'm never that fussed about Haas. Like they're just
the car looks good this year. The
does,
livery.
yeah.
I mean,
I just feel like with F1 fans, I don't know. I might be completely wrong, but I'm just never excited about Haas. Like,
is that because they're a new team and maybe they take a few years to get into?
Maybe because I think you don't know if you want to commit to following them because you feel like, well, they might be gone in a year.
Yeah, you look like Manor Racing and all that,
and HRT, and then you had Virgin Racing and
Caterham.
Yeah. But I'm always behind any new team in terms of it helps keep people have a job, but it's also producing younger drivers to get into F1. So, I think good luck to them, but I don't know what to expect. I think Magnussen and Grosjean, they've got plenty of years of experience in F1 now. We'll see how they do. I think they'll be aiming for 4th place, though, if they did do it last year.
Yeah, we'll let you know. Williams, we've obviously discussed about it, just as George Russell was saying, I'd be lying if we were not the slowest at the moment, and this is the reality of the situation. So again, hopefully, Williams can do something about it. Alfa Romeo, quickly, Kimi Raikkonen is now...
Oh no, it's Alfa Romeo.
Oh, you almost made me say it. Alfa Romeo, formerly Sauber. Kimi Raikkonen is their new driver. Is that an exciting thing for the team as well as the mechanics, and obviously that somebody who's as big as I want personality in the sport is now racing for the team. They had Marcus Ericsson, who didn't do too bad last year.
I think Ericsson was a good driver. I just it's very rare to have a really bad driver in F1 because of their standards.
Yeah.
Pastor Maldonado. He still won a race. How did he win a race? I do not know. But
I was in a Williams.
I was in a Williams. And he was the last Williams driver to win a race. God damn it. And then, because Marcus Ericsson's gone to IndyCar, hasn't he? And, good luck to him. But I thought he was an okay driver. But what does it say about Kimi Raikkonen, though? It gives me two things. One, he wants to race in F1 still.
Yeah.
But what do you think the other reason is? Why do you think he's there? Come on, it's one word. It begins with M.
Money.
As well as that, marketing. Can you imagine their store now come race days? Because Kimi Raikkonen is actually statistically the biggest. He's got the most.
He's the most
fans.
loved driver, isn't he?
Yeah. Even though he's got no character, he is brilliant, though, isn't he? Like when he won in the US last year, it was like a team. It was like Leicester winning the Premier League. You just look at it and think, F1 loves Kimi. Yeah. Like we wanted to see him win a race again.
And what's more interesting about that is the fact that not many. Well, I don't want to say not many people, but Ferrari. A lot of people love Ferrari, but a lot of people also dislike Ferrari.
Yeah.
So even when Kimi Raikkonen winning in the US in a Ferrari, people forgot about what car he was driving. It was just the fact that Kimi Raikkonen won the race.
Yeah,
and I think again, like you said, that is spot on really with the marketing. Their store must have gone through the roof with the money too.
I think that's how Sauber looked at it and think, we've got a good driver, but financially, merchandise-wise, he's a massive driver. Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people are a little bit surprised with him going back there. But it's his boyhood team, isn't it? I think it's good. It's quite nice to see someone like Kimi go back there and to probably, give back to them for what they did for him in his F1 career. So, I mean, I don't know what to expect from Sauber, Alfa Romeo, sorry. I can't get used to that. It's not right.
Halfway through the season, we'll be spot on with that.
We'll be spot on with that. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I don't know where they're going to be. If they can compete like Leclerc and Ericsson did last year, then it's a very interesting season for them. But it's always different with Alfa Romeo. They always have either a good season or a really bad season.
Well, hopefully for Kimi Raikkonen. I know he's good. I think he signed a 2-year contract. They
2 years.
I think a lot of people are saying it's 1 with the option to extend for the second year. So I think hopefully we see Kimi Raikkonen around for a bit longer.
I really think it depends how this season goes because he might not like being very far back if the car isn't good enough.
Yeah, Alonso will go to him. Now you know how I like so we'll see about that. The last team I want to bring up is obviously another team that's changed its name, which is Racing Point. Which doesn't really sound like a team.
It's not a very
It doesn't
good
sound
name,
like an F1 team, really, does it? But of course, the Force India have changed its name to Racing Point. Lance Stroll is now a driver alongside one of Jamie's favourites, in Sergio Perez.
Yeah.
Is he still your favourite now, or is Charles Leclerc?
No, Sergio Perez is still my favourite.
No? Okay.
Leclerc is just someone I'm excited about because of how promising he is. But
Hang on, no, but what picture is on your laptop? Is that Charles Leclerc or is that Sergio Perez?
Charles Leclerc.
I think it's changed.
You see, maybe there needs to be some sort of movie of Leclerc and Perez making out, and then I'd probably like it. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Take a screenshot, and that's your wallpaper.
That's my wallpaper. If only they're on the same team, it'd be like the old Ferrari adverts with Raikkonen, Vettel, and Esteban Gutierrez learning how to speak Spanish. Oh, it was so funny. And then, yeah.
What of Racing Point then? We just think they're going to have a first season as this team.
I think they could be
mid-table.
I have a feeling they could be top 5.
Really?
I think they were really good when they changed. When they obviously had to have their points deducted. But that's because they had Ocon as well. Ocon was so good.
Yeah.
He was so good, and I think Lance Stroll. I don't know. I think Lance Stroll could be one of those that'll prove me wrong and think actually he's quite a good driver.
Yeah. Do you think because of the car he had last season? We're obviously blaming.
Well, he showed in Abu Dhabi he jumped so far up in that race.
His first laps were pretty good.
Yeah.
Weren't they?
And then obviously reality check will come in, and then the car has to go into the pits, and it's like right, we're at the back again.
Yeah.
But I think that's what was exciting for Racing Point when they think, obviously money helps, but it's like, he is a young driver. We should be getting people like him up because it is a promotion for him. Because Williams are way behind.
Mm-hmm.
Racing Point is. I think everyone has a love thing for Racing Point where they just keep progressing, but no one knows how.
Yeah.
Like Harry, our friend who loves F1, he was saying to me, like, they just seem to get it out the bag from nowhere. When it gets to the midway point, you think that's it, they're done for the season. No, they're fourth. The fact that they got fourth twice in a row, was it, or something like that? Is incredible. And I think for someone like Sergio Perez, he keeps getting the podiums. I don't know how. I really don't know how. And he's actually technically the most successful driver in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix history. It's hilarious. But, we'll see what happens. But I think it helps having someone like Perez there because he's he's loyal to that team. He knows he is. We all know he is because they revived his career, I thought, because of what happened with him at McLaren.
Yeah.
And then Lance Stroll's got his father there. So I can't see it being a bad thing because he's going to be racing for his dad. It'll just be interesting to see how Perez and them get on, really. Will Perez feel like he might be a bit in the shadows because it's like, his dad's in charge of me and the team? I probably won't bother him, but he's probably done it at other teams before where there's always that connection somewhere.
I think hopefully the experience of Sergio Perez will just make sure that they know he's number one driver.
Yeah, he's got to be. There's no.
I think you'll be knocking on the door of
no one's number one apart
of the
from
Stroll
Perez.
family if they find out that Stroll's number one driver. I think you'll be straight over there.
Depends which mansion I go to. I mean, they've got a few. I'd imagine. I might be at the wrong place.
Have to go to Canada.
Oh.
Now, before I move on to a couple of news stories from the testing, I need to discuss the Pirelli tyres this season.
Oh, duh. Are we doing a lecture now?
Yeah, this might sound complicated, and I might mess it up. So bear with me. It says here Pirelli have said that this is a more simplified design this year, and every single race they're going to have 3 compounds of soft, medium, and hard, which obviously is great because we're tired of the ultra soft, super soft, hyper soft, whatever the soft. But although there's 3 basic names that will play in each event, Pirelli has a new C1 to C5 system for notifying which actual compound is being used on a given weekend. The C1 is the hardest compound tyre, and the C5 is the softest. So if I look at the stats for the winter testing, all the lap times were done on the C5, which was the softest tyre, apart from Max Verstappen, which was done on the C3 tyre. So obviously C5 is the softest.
C3 medium then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So obviously you can tell that Red Bull weren't really that bothered about fastest laps during the winter testing, but it says there are now only 5 tyres in the range instead of 7 that were in last season. Australia, China and Azerbaijan, they've already decided will be the C2, C3 and C4, but they will use the soft, medium and hard wording.
I've got it. Yeah,
you got it?
Yeah.
I hope everybody listening's also got that. The company's hardest 2019 tyre will be available in Bahrain alongside the C1, C2 and C3 compounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that are we clear about that this season?
I'm still on the boat.
No idea, Pirelli.
I'm still on the boat.
Can we just say soft, medium, and hard? That's all it has to be. So get the Pirelli tyre situation out of the way quickly. Lewis Hamilton has said after the testing that he's bracing himself for the toughest battle yet. After conceding Ferrari possibly have the best car from pre-season testing. Mercedes team deficit, they think, is potentially about half a second. However, we saw Hamilton ended the final test just 0.03 seconds slower than Sebastian Vettel. So is he saying that now just to cover in case they don't win Australia, or because I'm pretty sure he said it last year as well?
Yeah, he did. I think he's just being honest. I think he's just saying there's not one team in it. It's at least two of us. But again, like I said about Renault, I don't know what it is about Renault. I just have this feeling they've got something that we don't know. And Red Bull. So, Red Bull, again, is another one because they've got new engines. So it's like that could be the game changer for them. And they've got Verstappen, who's just getting better and better every time I watch him. And look at the end of last season, he was just getting podiums like no tomorrow. He's the best driver, one of the best drivers I've ever seen, to be honest. And I know that's probably a bit dramatic, but I think he is a fantastic driver and a really nice guy from what we see as well. A proper personality, and he's only 21.
Yeah, I think that Mexico was the best one because they was trying to stop him from doing the fastest laps because he was trying to beat the time at the front. Yeah, it's like just slow down, Max. Come on.
And then Max just went. I don't know. There's some famous things he says on radios. It's like brilliant. And when he won in Austria. In front of the Dutch fans as well. That was amazing. But I think, Hamilton's just... I think he's just being respectable as well. He's looking at it and I think he wants this, though. Yeah. Hamilton...
He doesn't like winning just because he's the best. Yeah, he wants to win in a fight.
Exactly. Whether you like him or not, I like the fact that he does think about the fans in terms of, I want the races to be fun for these lot because these are the guys that come out and, paid to come and see it. And I remember watching his video recently about hospitality at Mercedes, and he goes on and praise them, saying they're the ones who work the hardest on the weekend, and no one talks about them because they're like there from 5 a.m. and they don't finish till 11 p.m. at night. Yeah. And I think for Hamilton as well, he loves a challenge. He's proven that over the last few years. He's just, in my eyes, he's just getting better and better every time I watch him. I think even when you watch the boring races, you've got to watch it back and think that's not because everyone else is slow. He's just very, very good. And Hamilton's lived up to his promise that when we first saw him in his first season, he was so close to his first championship in his rookie season, and he's living up to it now after he went to Mercedes. So I hope he's right that it's going to be quite a challenge because as a fan, that's what I want. But, if he wins a 6 World Championship, then he's only one off Schumi. Yeah,
well, that's the balance, isn't it? And I think with Schumacher's, obviously, record that close, if Lewis Hamilton wins again, me and you aren't the best fans of Lewis Hamilton, but if he wins that again, you then go, well, actually, that's even more interesting because he's only one off Schumacher.
Off Schumacher. So, and I think he'll beat his race wins of 91. Championships, I don't know he'll win. I reckon he'll beat his race wins because there's more races now as well, and he wins 10 or 13 of them each season. It's crazy,
isn't it? Yeah. Well, crazy at the same time.
Thing. We spend too much together.
Now, quickly, this is not a news story really to do about F1. Apart from it's got Fernando Alonso in it. Two-time world champion Fernando Alonso has become an ambassador for McLaren, and it has said that he will be included in testing their F1 car this year and also for 2020. Now, you said this off air of the podcast. Is this just like another marketing ploy, like Kimi Räikkönen's?
I think it's just a bit more. He's still at the team, isn't it? I think he's still gonna have inputs and all that, and we'll see him on race weekends. I'm sure there'll be times when he'll be like, "It's quite nice not having to work." I'm actually
get his deck chair out again.
Because he was in F1 since 2001. So imagine how weird it'll be not racing in a race weekend. Apart from the time he was in Indianapolis doing that radio message to Jenson Button, and then he told him not to pee in his seat.
But again, he's doing that with McLaren this year.
He is.
So again, that's another partnership to.
Yeah, he announced it last week for the helmet and all that as well. And I just think, for him, he's one of those where I think he wants to relax a little bit now, but he also wants to keep winning. He's still winning, isn't he? In all the other series he's doing. And he's nailing it at the moment. He won Daytona, didn't he, back in January? Yeah. So the guy still wants to race, but I think he's just trying to be a bit more relaxed because F1 is hectic.
It's grueling.
It's core, yeah. You're pre-season started a few weeks ago. That's when it really starts. I'd imagine in the months when there's no F1, they're in the factory sorting things out anyway, but it's a long year. So I think he looked at it and thought, he even said in his final interview in F1, he said, I want to go down to the shop. He just wants a normal life. But the racing is there. When you've got a talent, you can't not use it. Yeah. So I think that's the way he's seeing it. But there's no surprise there. I think they're just trying to address that he's still a McLaren guy. So if anything happened to like Norris or Sainz, I think they could easily ask him if they were really desperate, but I don't expect that.
No, hopefully Norris and Sainz have a good year, but he just said it's a true honour and it's sort of a new beginning. And he also does a lot of karting at his own racetrack in Spain.
Yeah.
So again, he says this is important for the team and for myself to unlock new potential for youngsters, because obviously Sainz is still young and obviously Norris is his first season. So again, having Fernando Alonso sort of there to guide you if you need that.
I think it's great. I think it's great for Carlos Sainz having someone like Alonso, because he'll ask for advice. I'm sure he'll ask him, well, you know, what do I do, etc. And then, because I'm sure Fernando Alonso will send him a text. He'll go, execute order 2007 when it's over Lando Norris. When it's like a pit, you know, in Hungary, he'll go into the pit stop. He's like, Carlos won't move. We get out of the pit. Lando's right behind you.
Well done,
amigo. But yeah, unless Carlos Sainz Senior is not happy about that. You know, I think in this new F1 documentary as well, there's this clip of Carlos Sainz watching a race with his dad back in Spain, and they're very, very close. And Alonso was there with them, I think, as well. So there's definitely going to be this like kind of threesome connection where I think Fernando really wants someone like Carlos Sainz to succeed for Spain, because it's important for the motorsport to get funding over there. And he keeps posting on Instagram all these karting races as well. So Alonso, I love Alonso because he's just got a passion for motorsport, and it's great that he wants to give back to the community from where he was from. So it's great that he's an ambassador, and you know, hopefully see him soon. I'm just so glad he doesn't want to be a pundit, because it's just not him. It really isn't him. I think you need character. I'm not saying he hasn't got any, but I think he's a lot better than being on TV. I
think he's got too much character as well. You know, we've seen him that he could go over.
Oh, he's just an honest bloke, and you know, that clash he had with Johnny Herbert, I think said it all. He said to him, what did he say to him? He said, "You never, you know, you're here because you didn't win." Yeah,
you moan at me, but you never won a race. Or you never won a championship. Classic Fernando Alonso. Now we're going to wrap it up, but there's a poll on the BBC F1 site when I was doing the research for this, and it was about the best looking car on the grid. Now, we did a video for our channel for Let's Talk Sport about this, and it was obviously the best looking car this season in F1. So, you know, I'll leave the link for that, so go and check that out. But the result was the same as ours, where we said McLaren were the best looking car on the grid. 18% of the people voted for McLaren as the best car on the grid. Mercedes were just behind on 17%.
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo had 15. Ferrari, Renault and Williams all had 12. But the lowest one was Racing Point with 1%. So, you know, we are the fans. We know because we know McLaren are the best looking car on the grid. I mean, you said Williams. You wanted Williams, I think,
did,
really,
yeah.
but I overvoted you.
Yeah, I think they all watched our video and then thought, yeah, we agree with these two. They're gods. Yeah. They represent the F1 fan community very, very well.
Yeah, and we're now going to listen to the podcast. So hello, if you're all
hello,
but yeah, so that sort of wraps it up. I mean, the next episode of the Pole Position podcast, we will look at the first race of the season, the Australian Grand Prix, the 15th.
6 a.m. start.
Or you getting up for 6 a.m? Of course
you
are.
Yeah,
of course you are. 15th to the 17th of March at Albert Park in Melbourne. I can't wait. But we've got the first preview to do that. So that'll be the second episode of the Pole Position podcast. So I've been Jack Price. Jamie Davies, thank you very much for being on this first episode of the podcast. And
I'm faster than you.
Oh. I'll get pole position.
Oh, damn it.
We'll see
I'll get the race win.
Damn it.
Unless you want that pole position trophy I don't know if they still do that.
We'll do our own pole position trophy. Best driver of the year, we'll give you a pole position trophy.
Vettel and Hamilton, when it comes to the end of the season, they'll be like, Lewis, you didn't win the World Championship, how do you feel? The pole position trophy is what matters.
Handed over by both me and Jamie Davies. They will be absolutely loving it. That was the first episode of the Pole Position podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the second.